with all due respect, I don't care about your health in general. You can do whatever you want. But to make stuff like this and make other people that aren't going to do the research, that are just going to listen to what you have to say and believe every word of it, that's when it's dangerous. I could care less what you do. Honestly, I could care less what you do. I don't care about how healthy you are, how unhealthy you are. It really doesn't matter to me. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, today's video, I'm really excited about it. But before we get into it, I do want to say, if you see this lovely shirt that I'm wearing, or maybe the hat, and you're thinking to yourself, I would love to pick up one of those and support John, who I love very much, and I appreciate the content that he makes. Wow, that's awesome, because they're available now. So if you'd like to click the link right down in the description and get yourself one of these lovely pieces of clothing, that'd be awesome. There's also a long sleeve t-shirt, a white one, and shorts that I'm wearing right now, but I'm not going to try and show you because that would be very awkward. But if you want to do that, I would really, really appreciate it. But today's video, I was sent these TikToks by a creator. We're not going to be going over their name, and I did my best to get the name actually removed from the TikTok, because the last thing that I want is anybody going over to this person's account and trying to white knight for me, or I want to share my points of view, and I want to share where I disagree, but I don't need anyone doing that for me. I'm a big boy, and I can handle myself. Alrighty? So this is the creator right here, and what they are going over basically is, they basically go over how obesity is pretty much healthier than not being obese. All right, so that's the claim that they're making, and we're just gonna go over what they say in their video and see what we think.
The first thing I want to talk about in this part is a 2016 U.S. health survey that the government did that showed that 50% of obese people, I'll use the medical terms they use in the studies, are healthy, are metabolically healthy, which means 50% are not, but 50% are, and a lot of people would assume it was zero. That also means, they also showed that 30% of thin people are, or normal weight people, the study called them, are metabolically unhealthy.
Okay, so before we get into the video too much, I want to make it clear that they are using BMI, right? So BMI is what is used a lot in all of these studies, right? They use the BMI. When they talk about obesity, they're talking about their BMI. I am considered obese still by my BMI. I'm 5'8" and I weigh 210 pounds. You can put that into a calculator. It will come out as obese. I am still technically obese, and I would consider myself healthy, so I would be considered obese, healthy and obese, right? So I think that's one point, but that's just a very small thing. We're going to keep going, but I just want you guys to remember that, right? When I think when a lot of people, when they hear the word obese, they think morbidly obese, which I know a lot of people don't like that word, or they think severely overweight. But not everyone that is considered obese is that.
So there is a 20% difference there, but in general, being thin does not equal being healthy all the time, and being fat does not equal being unhealthy all the time. That's just one base study. I also wanted to talk about Dr. Carl Levine, who actually found, he's a cardiovascular heart surgeon and researcher, talking about Dr. Carl Levine. He wrote the book called The Obesity Paradox, which is older and a little problematic.
Okay, so listen to that part, right? It's older and it's a little problematic. So right there, you can tell that there is a lot of stuff that this person, Carl Levine, which we will get into, that they say that this person right here that's making the video disagrees with, right? So there's definitely going to be some cherry picking going on with the information that's shared. I just wanted to make that clear, and I wanted y'all to notice that.
But his research does discuss the fact that fat people actually have a better prognosis than thin people when cardiovascular things are considered. So if two people, one who's fat and one who's thin, both get the same cardiovascular disease, the mortality rate in a fat person is actually 30 to 50% lower than in a skinny person. So people seem very concerned about fat people getting heart disease, but when we get it, it is less likely to kill us.
Okay, so when we're talking about that, think about it, right? So if someone that is skinny or relatively healthy or normal weight gets a heart disease or has a heart defect or something like that, that's usually because it is a genetic thing that has been passed down through their bloodline, right? Like their parents have had it, stuff like that. When someone that is overweight ends up having a heart disease or heart issues, a lot of times it's because, and I mean this in the most nice way possible, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but it's because we have put ourselves in that position through the choices that we have made, right? So the food that we have eaten, the activity that we haven't done, how we got to be obese has led us to having that heart disease, right? Versus it being a genetic thing that you, regardless of if you are overweight or not, we're going to have. And I can almost guarantee if that person that was thin but had the heart issue, if they were to not be thin and they were to be overweight, or if they were to be obese or morbidly obese, I can almost guarantee that heart issue would have been much more serious
than in a thin person. So it is actually healthier if you have a cardiovascular disease to be overweight than to be skinny. As far as like mortality rates go, I shouldn't say healthier. If you have a cardiovascular disease, that's not healthy, but your mortality rate is better. So,
all right. So this is the doctor that she's talking about. This is Carl Levine. I've watched this whole video. We're not going to go over the whole thing because it's like 17 minutes long, but they go over the obesity paradox, and he talks a lot about that. But a big part of what he actually talks about in this is when people think about weight, they think specifically about someone being, fatter, right? But a lot of times, and what he kind of brings up is if you have a lot of extra fat, which I'm sure a lot of us know about this, you usually have a good amount more of extra muscle. And so he talks a little bit about in this study, or in this interview, is he says what's interesting is it might be more beneficial to have more muscle. It's not just because you have more fat, it's because you have more muscle because you have fat, right? You build muscle from being overweight. But he says something at the very end of this interview. Again, this is the person she talks about. He says something at the very end of this interview. I have it queued up. Hopefully it's the exact moment. But I have it queued up that he says himself. All right. So I just want y'all to listen. Oh, okay. It got cut off, but I remember it was right here.
Better than the skinny person, but long term, it's never good to have severe obesity. That's always, if you follow people for 10, 15, 20 years, the severely obese do not have a good prognosis.
right.
So again, that was the doctor that she puts out, that she is like quoting here, right? So to me, that makes it very hard to believe the other stuff that they say, which we'll go into, because it seems very clear that if they have to rely on this person and taking one very specific thing that this person says, misconstruing it, but then saying everything else that they say isn't true or making it seem like it's problematic, I don't know. That seems a little funky to me.
A quote I wanted to talk about when weight equals health is from Dr. Jeff Hanger, who says that the dominant way of thinking about weight, that higher weight individuals will always be unhealthy, is flawed. That is a flawed point of view that a lot of doctors still have and a lot of society definitely have, even though there's research that shows that's not true.
This I don't disagree with. I think that just looking at someone that might be overweight or even fat and thinking like they are super unhealthy and they're like a ticking time bomb, that isn't health. That isn't like helpful, especially when we're talking about going into like, the hospital, going in to see your doctor. Like the reason that this stuff is so frustrating to me, and like I try and push back about this, is because there are genuine arguments that I think could be pushed forward. But then when we sit here and say like, actually, it's better to be obese if you have a heart and stuff like that, it's like, come on, dude, you're pushing it too far when there are things that you are saying that could be pushed through that people would listen to, but you're also tacking all this stuff else, all this other stuff on that is just so ridiculous that no one is going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, that's definitely true.
Talked about research in previous parts. Feel free to check it out. But some people are going to be like, hey, in the research you talked about, you said 50% of fat people are healthy, which means 50% are unhealthy, and 70% of thin people are healthy. So if 50% are healthy versus 70%, obviously being thinner is healthier than being bigger. That's not actually necessarily true, because we're ignoring some of the details, some of the other factors that are going to cause fat people to have more health issues than thin people that isn't necessarily based on their weight. So we talked about how 50% of fat people are healthy, 70% of thin people are healthy. So clearly thin people are healthier, right? No, wrong. Because fat people deal with some things that thin people don't deal with. They deal with weight stigma and they deal with yo-yo dieting. So
Okay, so first off, weight stigma, I agree that there are some things there. Again, especially when we talk about, there are things I agree with, right? Weight stigma, especially when it comes to the medical field, is a problem, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed, 100%. But then to say that thin people don't deal with yo-yo dieting, it's like, I feel like she is intentionally being like, just not looking at other sides of the argument. Like, to think that thin people don't deal with yo-yo dieting, so many people deal with yo-yo dieting, like regardless of your size, right?
Thin people are not yo-yo dieting because they're thin, unless they have disordered eating, which would not put them in the healthy range. So that's not the 70% we're talking about. Yo-yo diets, going up and then regaining the weight, then losing the weight, then regaining the weight, which we know happens because 95% of diets fail, is bad on your body. It stresses your body. It also stresses your brain. It is bad for you mentally, as well as.
So that's another thing that you hear a lot, is the 95% of diets fail. We've talked about this in previous videos. If you're curious about that, you can go find that. That's a stat that I personally think is not entirely accurate. And again, for me, the whole thing is, so many people, when we talk about diets failing, it's the type of dieting that we have done for years and years and years. It's the fad diets. It's the extreme diets. It's the unnecessary cutting of things. It's like really going from 0 to 100, which I agree isn't necessary. But I do think there is a way to change the eating that you are doing, the way to increase the activity that you have that isn't super unsustainable, that can be done for a long period of time, and that doesn't fail 95% of the time. I truly believe that, but it's a lot of time people bring out these stats and they just say, oh yeah, it's impossible to lose weight, so you shouldn't even try. It's just frustrating to me when I hear that.
Weight stigma. So the stigma of being fat, of having doctors, friends, family, random people on TikTok comment on your body and its size, as well as not being able to necessarily fit people in the systemic oppression that comes with being fat, causes stress, which has negative health effects. I want to read a quote from Dr. Wittert, who is an endocrinologist at the University of Aldale. They said that stigma so powerfully undermines everything. Stigma is artificially inflating the link between obesity and poor health outcomes. One big thing is that weight stigma causes fat people to go to the doctor less. Talk to any fat person in the world, and unless they already are aware of their chronic illness that forces them to go to the doctor more, or they are disabled and hopefully have access to health care that makes them go to the doctor more for their disability to get the help that they need.
Again, this is a point that I totally agree with. 100%. I've dealt with weight stigma in the doctor's office before. I've told the story before. It 100%, that is something that needs to be addressed. I personally really struggle, though, with being like, that is also the same as the reason that someone is struggling with a heart disease, or they are struggling with diabetes, or all of these other things that are linked to your size, joint pain, not being able to bend down and tie your shoes, not being able to go up a flight of stairs. I really struggle with being able to say that's because of weight stigma.
Fat people don't like the doctor. Doctors don't treat us well. We don't go there. So we're less likely to get preventative treatment, and we're less likely to get proactive treatment and early treatment about things, which means disorders seem like they're more intense and worse for us because we don't get them treated until they're to that point, because doctors cause us stress. Why stress is contributing to unhealthy factors is proven in a study done in 2017 by...
Yeah, so there are a lot of people in the comments right now that I'm seeing that they're like, well, you should just get a new doctor. I used to think that too, and I can understand that line of thinking, but the more research I've done, a lot of people just especially if it's a more rural area, you don't have access to another doctor, or it's just not as easy as be like, okay, well, just go down the street. You know, it's not like, oh, I don't want McDonald's, I want Burger King. It's not, for most people, for some people maybe, but for a lot of people, it's not as simple as, I'm just going to get a new doctor. So again, that is one of the biggest arguments arguments that Hayes proponents or people that are part of Hayes that they have brought forth that I really do agree with. Like, I really do think that that is a problem because I personally have felt that before in the past.
Vadvalu and Mate, I'm going to make sure I spell their names right. I don't think I'm pronouncing them correctly. I apologize. They published a study showing that weight stigma doubles over a 10-year period of time your high allostatic load. An allostatic load is stress hormones. So being overweight means that over a 10-year period of time, you're going to have twice as much intense stress hormones and a high allostatic load than a thin person would. High allostatic loads. So what does that mean? That's like really intense stress hormones. And having a high allostatic load has been proven to cause cardiovascular disease, ischemic heart disease, peripheral arterial disease, as well as glucose dysregulation, metabolic dysregulation, and inflammation, which causes joint pain. Hey, all those things that people say when you're fat, you get those things. Yes, they are also caused by the intense stress that it can be caused for anybody by stress, but for fat people, the stress is twice as much over a 10-year period of time because of weight stigma.
So this, I struggle with it because it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that you're wrong, but again, being massively overweight, again, all of these are not, again, I want to make it clear, that's why I brought it up at the beginning of this video. All of these are not for people that are severely obese or morbidly obese. This is talking about people that are, I hate to say it, but just obese. Again, me. I am technically obese, all right? I want to make that very clear. That's what's frustrating is because then it gets conflated as if you are, 200 pounds overweight, it's the same thing. It's not. It's not. It really isn't. These studies are not studying those people. And I think that sucks, but that's not what's happening here. So again, we're conflating all of these people, and to say that like the stress is what's causing these problems, I think most people would hear that. And again, I'm not gonna, obviously stress is not good, but to say like stress is what's causing like heart stuff, diabetes, I'm sorry, but there's more to the story than that, I believe.
So obesity is not killing fat people. Fat phobia is killing fat people. Weight stigma is killing fat people. Let's say it again for the people who are confused or aren't listening clearly. Obesity isn't killing fat people. Fat isn't killing fat people. Fat phobia is killing fat people.
So I disagree with that. I think it can be contributing to it for sure. Fat phobia, weight stigma, all of these things, especially again, like I've stated many times, if it's causing you to be afraid to go to the doctor, if it's causing you to be afraid to talk about these issues, 100%. But for a lot of, if you're having these issues for a lot of things, losing weight and not being morbidly obese, it won't happen. So you won't have those issues that you need to go to the doctor for. I'm not saying that, it's not like you're always going to be healthy if you're not overweight. Of course, that's absolutely not what I'm saying here. But to say that it's only weight stigma, that is, come on. Like that, come on. Why do we have to bring it to such an extreme? Because again, you're losing anyone that might agree with what you're saying, at least parts of it.
So when we're looking at how people can be healthy, no matter what their weight is, a really good recent study is Matheson et al. In 2012 put out a study focusing on obesity and wellness and different health factors, and found 4 main health factors that help just mortality rates be lower. And their conclusion from their abstract states that healthy lifestyle habits are associated with a significant decrease in mortality regardless of baseline BMI, which means no matter how fat you are, doing these healthy behaviors decreases your mortality rate and makes you healthier.
Listen to what's about to be said right here, okay? Just listen.
These behaviors are exercising regularly, which is more than 12 times a month.
12 times a month.
Having 5 servings of fruit and vegetables each day. Moderating your alcohol intake and avoiding or quitting smoking. So those are the 4 things. They also talk about reducing stress, which we know fat people are under a lot of, and getting high quality sleep as being main factors of health. So
again, most of those things, if you take them seriously and actually do them, again, I'm not saying it's going to make everyone lose weight. But again, when I make these videos and when I talk, I'm talking about someone that is severely overweight, right? Where I was at my heaviest, and people that are in that area. If you do those things, what do you think is gonna happen? You're gonna gain weight? No. No. You're gonna lose weight. You're working out 12 times a week, eating fruits and vegetables. What do you think is going to happen?
Of that is weight related. The big thing that we should be talking about, and if you're watching these, there's like one troll in my comments. It's like, I care about fat people. I'm worried. I don't want you to die a horrible, slow death or whatever.
So the thing for me, and this might sound mean, you can do whatever you want. This lady can do whatever she wants. I don't care, right? Personally, like about this person, like you do what you need to do. I don't like lies being told and then people being made to feel like what they are going through is like, so many people hear this stuff and then they are struggling with their weight and they are struggling with feeling bad about their weight or actually having health issues. And they start to think, oh, maybe nothing's wrong. Maybe I should just keep going down this path. With all due respect, I don't care about your health in general. You can do whatever you want. But to make stuff like this and make other people that aren't going to do the research, that are just going to listen to what you have to say and believe every word of it, that's when it's dangerous. I could care less what you do. Honestly, I could care less what you do. I don't care about how healthy you are, how unhealthy you are. It really doesn't matter to me. Sorry. That's why I have a problem with it. Not because I think that you should be healthy. If you don't want to be healthy, that's none of my business, to be honest.
You don't want me to exist because I'm fat, but you care about me so much, it's fine. If you care about fat people and claim to love fat people, telling people to lose weight doesn't help. As previously discussed, weight stigma actually is more likely to cause all these disorders than their fat is. What you can do is to internally, let's focus on internalized fat phobia. How do I look at myself? How do I look at my own body? And how do I feel about it? Externalized fat phobia. Am I in people's TikTok comments commenting on their weight? Am I saying out-of-pocket things to fat people at the grocery store or on the street when they're just trying to live their lives? Do I buy from places that have inclusive clothing sizes and gender-inclusive options? Like, are you doing those things? Next, external factors. So you say you love fat people, you want to help fat people, you're working on fixing your internalized fat phobia, stopping external fat phobia, stopping other people from being fat phobic when you see it. So what can you do on the grand scale for like the systemic issues behind health? Not necessarily fat phobia, that might be another video, but behind health issues. If you care about fat people, if you're worried about people's health or the health of the population in general, you need to be contacting policyholders and stakeholders about ending food segregation. There's a huge issue with access to food based on class and race in this country that stops people from being able to get 5 servings of fruit and vegetables every single day. So that's the first thing we need to be working on. You need to contact policymakers about their initiatives for like fitness and obesity epidemic issues, and okay, well, are you doing things to make people healthier? Let's stop focusing on weight.
This is all good stuff for the most part at the end here.
One issue a lot of these studies do not focus on is disability, and the fact that physical ability and also mental disability can affect people's ability to do these healthy behaviors. It just does. That's just a fact. So if you're worried about the health of individuals, no matter their weight, then you should be contacting policymakers and stakeholders and striving to ask them to improve financial stability situations for people on disability, which are currently terrible policies and hurts people on disability. Help people with disabilities get access to appropriate housing, appropriate food options, financial assistance, help them get physical and financial access to places where, as their body is able, they might be able to partake in movement that feels good to their body, because right now they may not have that option because it's not accessible. So that is another big thing you can do if you care.
So this is why I struggle so much with stuff like this, because I know people probably don't believe me when I say I agree with a lot of health at every size and a lot of this stuff. A lot of this stuff, especially as you saw there at the end, I just kind of let her do her thing because I was like, yeah, this is all good stuff. It's the stuff in the middle and a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the things that are used to try and push it forward and the more extreme takes that it's just like, I can't get behind all of that. And I won't. I won't because I disagree with it 100%. But there are a lot of other things that I do agree with that I do think can be helpful. So I don't know. It's really frustrating for me because I'm like, I hate being in the middle on things, but I really am in the middle on this. But I just, those are my thoughts on that. Just be careful who you listen to. And if they start bringing up studies and you really want to be informed, look into them. That's all I'm going to say.